Hello, John Mayfield. Glad to have you on the podcast today, the Leverage Podcast, and just super. As we talked a little bit before we jumped on here, so many things that we have in common, and very interested in the many things that you're doing there. And I did mention to you that I'd love to hear maybe a little bit of your past. I've known you, I think, for almost 18 years was the first time we were in the St. Louis market together. And of course, now I'm in the Branson market,
Right.
and you're still in that market on the other end of the state from me. But would you just share a little bit about your work history and where you're at now and what's brought you to the place you're at right now in business?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Paul, for allowing me to be on your program. Very exciting.
Yeah.
So I got my real estate license in 1978 at the age of 18. People are quickly calculating how old I am, and so I've been in real estate my whole life, and actually started a real estate school back in 1987 because there were no local schools. You had to drive to St. Louis. And I remember the first time I went to get approved, the great big old thick application. And I just threw it in the
Yes.
wastebasket because I thought that's just too much work. And then I thought,
Yeah.
how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So I just had my assistant make copies of everything. And then I just took a pen and started completing what we needed to type. That was um, you know, computers were just coming in, but the official small business computer didn't really arrive, I think, until the early 90s. Maybe there were some around then, but so my assistant typed it all up and we got approved, and that kind of led into some of my speaking and training more regularly, which is how I met you. I think it was around
Yes.
2004 or five, or maybe a
Yes.
little earlier. I taught a GRI class in St. Louis, and
That's exactly
at the
right.
St. Louis Realtors, and we visited. And so anyway, I took my mother's company, took over it after she retired, and grew the company to three offices and about 50 agents. And in '07, or '06, I was just burned out. And I remember
Sure.
watching a video from Lou Holtz on called Do Right. And Lou said Lou, it was funny because he said he wrote all his goals down, and, he had this list of 100 or I don't know how many goals. And one of them was to be on Johnny Carson. And he wasn't working at the time, and he was sharing all
Hmm.
these with his wife. And she said, here's a goal, go out and get a job. Anyway, he went to Arkansas, and he went to all these big colleges, Notre Dame. And then he got the job at the New York Jets. And he
Huh.
woke up one day and he said, "Man, I'm just miserable." And he quit and just walked away from it. It wasn't what he was happy doing. And then it was kind
Huh.
of interesting, Paul. I saw another uh, sports coach speak, and he actually got the Boston Celtics job. I think it was the New York Nets. Anyway, he quit as well because he wasn't happy. And that was
Hmm.
in '06. And I thought, I'm not happy anymore. I loved listing and selling. I loved work. I loved being a broker, and I loved managing all of these agents, but
Yeah.
it really, my heart wasn't there. And so I sold my company. My wife and I bought a pick your own blueberry blackberry farm April 7th, 2007. We had a late spring freeze, which we lost our crop. I
Oh.
had gone to work for a bank. The bank was on the watch list. That was the pre 2000 era. So the feds
Ah.
came in and basically said, "You're not putting a bank in Farmington." And then, so there's this perfect storm. I'm unemployed with no job. We've lost our blueberry blackberry crop, and I signed a 2-year
Oh.
non-compete. And as I say in my classes, oh yeah, and I'm $1 million in debt, so we're having fun now. So anyway,
Oh.
I had to
Gosh.
start over, and that led me to a lot of different just things to keep my head above water. And I mean, I tried to get work at Red Robin, and the economy was bad back then. I mean, I was willing to do anything. And, but I was fortunate that I was doing some work for Hewlett Packard. I was teaching and training. And then my wife said, she saw some work I was doing for some clients, and she said, you ought to put your real estate school online. You know, it's so much more interactive and fun. So I did that in 2017, and here I am. What is that? 8 years later, still listing and selling real estate. My daughter and I have a team. I run an online real estate school in um, 10 states now, and I speak and train and write, and I'm having the time of my life. So anyway, I'm
I
having
love that.
fun.
Yeah. So the real estate school it began in Missouri, right?
Yes, yes.
And then, and you know,
And
um,
I should
being
throw this
around,
in because it's kind of
sure.
fun, but
Yeah.
when I got the school approved, I do a lot of international work and help a friend in France. I actually got the school approved and did most of the work on the school while I was living in France.
Oh,
So that was kind of fun,
yeah,
I
no kidding.
anyway, so
And you have a unique method, I think, to your schooling because I think it was there's another school that started in St. Louis, or at least is based in St. Louis. At least it was when I lived there back in the early 2000s, and they now that was basically you pay and you're on your own for the most part, right? And
yeah.
so kind of self-paced and self-guided all the way. Where maybe you can update me a little bit more on how you go to train. But I saw where you had your live sessions, you had video of you explaining obviously concepts in each of the areas of the real estate training for the licensing. And it was something where, I would say you endeared the people to yourself as well. And it became a really good relationship with you as well. In the other schools, there was really, for the most part, there was no relationship. It was just academic. Am I missing something, or does that seem
Well,
right?
no, it's interesting because, and thank you. I've tried to be what I saw with a lot of the other schools and still today, and I don't want to say this to
No, not to put them
berate
down, but
my
it's just different.
competition or anything,
Yeah.
is that a lot of schools, because I'm licensed in several states, and so I have to take CE, and I love to take a CE course from different providers. And there was one provider, a fairly large provider in one of the states, and they had a class on, which I'm going to do a CE class on after I went through that course. But I was so excited because it was on train, emotional support animals, and there's another name. The flip side of that is there's an emotional support, and then there's the dogs who actually do a lot of training. I mean, they do a lot of the work for their owner,
Oh,
and
yeah.
support anyway. And I was so excited about this course because I'm like, I want to know about this topic because I've been really passionate about it. And Paula was just reading and no visuals and maybe one or two pictures. I'm kidding you not. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, why didn't you do a video like somebody with their dog, their support animal,
Sure.
and talk about, how do you get along with, in a world with a support animal, and so many things you could do. So that was my goal, was really do more live streaming. And when I say
Mhm.
live streaming, kind of as a study aid to help answer the phone, return phone calls, return emails.
Yes.
It's amazing to me. And I apologize because I don't know who all might be watching this, but here's a tip that I would give you, because I do a lot of cold calling today, and I know Paul, you do as well. We both
Yes.
have some business to business, And I call a lot of associations, realtor associations, leave a message for a CEO or for the director of education. I think my voice doesn't sound like I'm some goofball or some strange person.
Right.
And I'm like, this John Mayfield. I repeat my name twice and my phone number twice, like Kim Darty always taught us. If you ever went to one of Kim's classes in St. Louis, and Paul, they don't call you back or they
No.
don't answer their phone. I literally have students who will say, I've called my own real estate school that I went through and they won't answer the phone, but you pick the phone up. 2 nights ago at 7:30, 8 o'clock, a lady called me from Virginia and she said, "Oh, I thought I would get a voicemail. This is so cool that you answered your phone." And she had some questions and I answered them. And 12 midnight, she bought the class. So, I've always just tried to do little
That's awesome.
things to
Yeah.
go, but it's still a challenge for me to compete with these larger schools because they have bigger advertising budgets. And so today, when I went to pick my wife up in St. John, she was babysitting, and one of my students called me. He had been a salesperson student. He just passed his broker's test this week, both on the first try. And he said,
Oh,
"John,
wow.
I just tell everybody about your school." His son went through it. So, but not everybody has that same experience. I know some
Right.
people may not like it, but he said, you just have to follow John, write down what he says, and you'll pass the test. So
That's right.
anyway, so I didn't.
That's
That was
great.
probably way too long, but but I just try to
No,
do
that's good
things
to know.
different. But I want the viewers to understand just little stuff like sending a thank you card, answering your phone, returning an email, or I mean, I return phone calls to people. I used to have a property management company years ago when we had the three offices, and they'll say, "Did you have anything for rent and park hills?" And they sound like someone just if you were going off the voice, you're like, I don't know if I'd want to rent to this person.
Yeah.
But I always call
Right.
them back and tell them
Sure.
it's a courtesy call to say I don't handle rentals anymore, and sorry I
Yeah.
can't help you. I don't know. I would love to get that same kind of response from some of the people I call, but some of them, I leave 2, 3 phone messages and they never call back, but I'm not going to give up either. So,
Well, I'm similar in that regard, and it is amazing to me. And I mentioned to you earlier, I taught a business planning class for 2026 today here at my office to several business owners, and we talked about that exact subject. That, well, I think the most common thing that's happening now, if they don't answer, that's not a good thing. Yet, even if somebody calls and you get a text immediately back saying, hey, I'm in a meeting, love to call you back later, that is satisfactory. I know I reached a human being, probably anyway.
right.
AI could fool me maybe now, but and at least I know that I'm going to hear back. In fact, when we started the podcast here, somebody had texted me and I just had said, hey, I'm going into a meeting and I'll get back to you later. And they're like, okay, fine, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And we're busy people and a lot going on. All of us do, and I think that the sense of honoring time. If I called you, it's generally for a reason, and I realize if I'm not in your phone, there's a lot of spam going on. At the same
Right.
time, I leave either a voicemail message or I text immediately following and say, hey, this is me, and the reason why I'm calling you is to inquire about something. I literally showed or was going to show a $550,000 house about 2 weeks ago, and it was a brand new construction, and I couldn't reach the agent, I couldn't reach the office, I couldn't reach anybody, and the door code was wrong, and I couldn't show it. And I'm going, we're about ready to lose a lot of money here if we can't get this house sold,
Yeah.
both of us. And, so, uh, you know, uh, So I was just kind of, and of course there could be emergencies and there could be things going
Sure.
on. I understand, of
But
course,
the
that does happen.
the sad thing is we see it too much. My wife and I
Yeah.
just sold our home and bought a condo, and we moved here in the same community. But
Oh,
I was just really discouraged because now I'm on the other side of the fence as a seller, and I hadn't been a seller for quite a while. I was 7 years ago, but our house sold quickly, and the agent was very good that sold our house for us. But this time, Paul, there were so many agents who showed our house and they would not provide feedback. Now, I
yeah,
get it. There are some people who say, don't let the seller know what your buyers thought. That's a hogwash. You know what? I've been doing this
yeah,
for 47 years.
yep,
You don't have to show me all your cards, but you're not lying to me if you're saying, hey, they liked it, but we've got some other houses they like as well, or we're looking at as well.
sure,
At least let me know. But if they were like, your kitchen's just way outdated or too small, other than that, Paul, they love the home. That I'm just helping you give information to your client if you need to get
yeah,
that price adjusted so that it can be sold. But people would not give feedback. They it, I would call them and say, "Hey, I was just curious what your people thought." After a couple of days, because I didn't want them to think I was, nervous, anxious to sell. Still wouldn't call back. It's just like my wife and I were just like, I guess this is the world we live in today, with many of the younger folks. And I'm not picking. I don't want to be one of those old guys that's picking on the younger generation, because
sure,
I've done some deals with some young agents who were very sharp and very responsive.
yes,
But communication's key, and working with other agents and not being a bully, that just helps you with negotiation. I mean, there's so many things like that that really, and maybe that's why, Paul, you and I grew up in the day when we had to go pick up a key from the office, and you had to physically meet the other agent as they handed you the key, or
right,
you
right,
you had to take the contract over to the office and sit down and talk to the agent, or at least could give them some information while you handed them the document. Today it's just, e-signature, and then they call you 6 hours later and say, I sent you a contract over, and sometimes dot loop and things will go into my
in a spam
updates.
folder or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I don't always hang out in my updates folder. I look at my primary folder. I mean, I go over there 3 or 4 times a day, but it's not like a regular place I check for stuff. But
right,
anyway, I'll get
right.
off my soapbox.
No,
But Paul and I are
it's
just
good.
trying to talk about you talk to any successful agents, they're most of them are very easy to work with, and they want to have a relationship, and they want
They
it to
do.
be, uh, at least I do. I want you to be successful on the transaction just as much as me, just like you showing that $500,000 property. So
Right, right. And we do have to have those discussions with our families about the fact that this business does run outside the boundaries of the normal business day, of
right.
course, and those types of things. And I carry a laptop with me all the time and can flip it open and do something because the opportunities arise and we have to be ready to answer questions, etc. And I'm not saying I wouldn't allow business to pass me by sometimes if I have something mission critical going on. But you're
Exactly.
right. There is those that are successful are transparent, and I will tell people, hey, I'll be with my teaching class tomorrow, or I'm going to be, with my grandkids, and you become real to them, because it's something where hey, we both have lives, and I'm not trying to skirt the issue. It's just something's important to me, and sometimes that builds more trust because if you said, hey, you're going to go take your granddaughter to her soccer game, I would be like, you go, Grandpa. I mean, that's a
Right.
good thing.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
almost a trust builder.
Right.
rather than, hey, I'm frustrated that I can't call you right now or whatever. Right. So
Exactly. Yeah.
very interesting. Very interesting. And well, thank you for the background. There's so much that you've accomplished in your career, and I appreciate your humbleness, and
Oh,
you've
absolutely.
always been in all the years that I've known you. You've always been a learner. You've been learning based. You're always you know taking in things and in that, because you don't arrive at all, do we? You don't arrive where
Yeah.
we
No,
know it
you
all
don't. Yeah.
at all, and you realize the value of getting help when you need it, those types of things, and being dependent. I recently, well, not exactly recently, but I read a book um, that's called "Thou Shalt Prosper," and I don't know if you've read that book. Have you
No,
heard
I
of that book?
haven't. Sounds interesting.
It's
Yeah. No.
it is. It's by the Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and he travels around, or he was traveling around with Dave Ramsey for years, and teaching that particular book about,
I
one of the
think I
things is
might have that on my, actually, I have heard of that.
yeah, the premise is really going back to the Old Testament, and he really says, why do the Jewish people seem to be so successful in business? And there's some principles that he goes through that they've carried through the generations, going all the way back to the Old Testament. And one of them is, that basically work was there before Adam and Eve. When
Right.
before sin arrived, work was there. Work is not a curse, in and of itself. And so earning money is not either. And the business, being a business, is not a bad thing, when you're ethical and obviously doing things properly. And so it's a book I'd highly recommend. It's got some really
Okay. Yeah.
great insights in it, and it's been around for a long time. I know at least 10 years in that type of thing. I wanted to move to the subject a little bit of your leveraging your virtual assistants, and I think you mentioned to me that you've had a virtual assistant for a number of years. Can you kind of give me a little bit of background on how
Yeah,
you first
absolutely.
discovered that option, and what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I actually hired my first virtual assistant when my daughter had decided to have her was pregnant and decided to stay home during her pregnancy, and
Yeah.
I actually thought I'm going to have to hire someone. So I called a company, and it was I thought I was talking to I was talking to a lady who was from Canada, actually, very nice
Ah,
woman, and she actually took all the information, and then the next thing you know, I was like talking to people from the Philippines, and I thought to myself, gosh, do I was hesitant because I wanted to naturally keep the money locally if I could,
sure.
but I couldn't find folks, Paul. I thought maybe a pastor, someone might know of someone, and
Yeah,
most of the people locally were wanting like 14, 15, $20 an hour. And I'm just a small business owner. And it was like I just couldn't afford that. And so I kind of did some research and I thought, you know, someone from the Philippines needs work just as bad as anywhere else.
sure.
And hired a lady, and actually she did a very good job for me and she still works for me today. And what I found for that to be successful is I use Loom a lot, and back then I do a couple other programs, but I just took the upfront time to write everything out, organize it into a drive, have videos that explain it. And then the key is, Gene and I met today and went over some things. And so it's worked very well. But, the key is communication, stay in touch. Actually, I have two that work with me, and, figuring out what their strengths are. So,
Yeah, it is a human being, and so I sometimes I say, there's no Swiss Army knife person out there, no matter where you go.
yeah,
They can do everything for you at a real high level. And so, and in the Philippines, I was fortunate to be a short-term missionary. Did some short-term mission work over there in the late '80s, and I just fell in love with the Filipino people in general at that time. And they learn English from elementary school primarily, especially in the Metro Manila area. And there's about I Googled it the other day, and there's about 50 million people in the workforce there, and primarily they're working for other companies in other countries doing that assistant work. And of course, for us here in Missouri, they're 13 hours ahead of us. And so they're generally working at night, in the middle of the night for us, if they're working our hours. And they love doing that. They know, but a lot of times they're supporting a multi-generational
Right.
household, right? Or something
Right.
of that nature. And the work ethics there are very high for the most part. So culturally, they're gonna stick to it and they're gonna get
Yeah.
things done, and so that's it's one of those things where you do have to overcome sometimes the idea
Right.
that, oh, hey, I'm giving an American job away. That's in a lot of ways that's not the case. You need to hire some locally. So if you're an electrician, you need to be on the job site. Yet, but the paperwork could be done remotely, or the
Yeah.
job costing or whatever needs to be done, those things, or promotion. So I like bringing that concept to them, and I mean, even our relationship and our bond with the Filipino nation right now is, since they're in the South China
Oh,
Sea,
absolutely.
is
Yeah.
becoming stronger and stronger. I mean, we're reopening our bases over there, naval bases and everything, and a lot of things going on in that part of the world, right? So
Right.
as well as in the Middle East. So yeah, so I feel good about that, and I've had my first virtual assistant was 4 years ago, and still works for me today, and very responsive as he was when he first started. And is a single. I have a single gentleman that doesn't. He doesn't have a family or anything,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But
Hey, not to, and I don't know
yeah,
if you can edit this out. Could
yeah.
I've my wife has fixed dinner and
Oh, is she
hasn't
giving you
done,
the call?
and I feel like no, I feel like I could have done a better job on some of that explaining. Could we maybe